Let's start with setting up our input action for our reload. So we're going to go to our third-person character folder, or wherever your input folder is. Open up your input folder, action folder, right-click, input, action. And let's name this IA_reload. Let's save all. And back in your IMC default folder, we're going to go ahead and add a new mapping, and this would be for our reload. And we're going to use R for reload. Just simple like that. Let's go ahead and close this IMC default. Now in our third-person character, blueprints, third-person character blueprint, I'm going to add the reload function right next to hold to sprint. I'm going to right-click and then go ahead and search for IA_reload. And this is going to be our input action for our reload. So when we press the reload button, we want to go ahead and check to see if any ammo was used from the gun first. And if it was, then we're going to go ahead and proceed with the reload. And if it's not, then we're just going to ignore the reload call. And we're going to use the interface function to take care of this as well. So in our content drawer, go to core, interfaces, BPI equipment. And here we're going to go ahead and add in a new function, and this will be called reload. I'm going to add this to our fire category, and I'm not going to have any input for this. Let's go ahead, compile and save. And to call that reload function, I'm going to go ahead and drag my BPC loadouts. Off of my BPC loadout, I'm going to get our equipped weapon. And I'm going to do a quick check to make sure that it is valid, that this weapon is a valid weapon. The reason why we're doing this check is if you're unarmed and if you press R, we want to completely ignore that request. If you don't put this validation check, then you're going to get an error saying that we're trying to reload a weapon and, you can't really reload unarmed hands. Anyway, so off of started, we're going to connect this execution point. And off of isValid, we're going to call in the reload interface function. So drag this equipped weapon, and we're going to go ahead and call for our reload message and connect this to isValid. And this is all you have to do for the reload weapon function. Now go to your weapon base and find our reload weapon event that we previously have created. I'm going to move this down a little bit, drag off of this reload weapon and call for play montage. And the in-skeletal mesh component is going to be our character mesh, which we're going to go ahead and drag this variable and plug it in here. And for the montage play, we're going to drag in our weapons info and then drag off of this, and we're going to break it. And we need our reload animation, so which is right here. And we're going to plug in our reload animation. Only when the animation is completed, we want to go ahead and truly reload the weapon, because if they're reloading the weapon and they get interrupted of such, we don't want to continue with the reload. We want to stop that reload from happening. So after we complete our entire reload animation, we're going to go ahead and set our ammo used to 0. This will reset the weapon so the player can fire again. Now we're going to set up our interface for reload as well. That is our manual reload call. So in here, we're going to go ahead under our interface. We're going to double click on this reload to set up this event. And when the player manually calls in for reload, we want to check to make sure that the ammo used is greater than 0. This will allow us to see if the player had shot at least one bullet out of the weapon, so we can trigger a true reload. Because you don't want to reload the weapon when the mag is already full. That doesn't make any sense. So here we're going to go ahead and check if it is greater than 0 and do a branch. If it is greater than 0, then off of true, we're going to call in the reload weapon function or event, which is right up here. Off of false, we're not going to do anything. I'm going to go ahead and press play, drag our weapon out, and if I press R right now, nothing really happens. But if I fire a shot, then if I press R, I can see that the player is going to go ahead and reload the weapon. And if I pull out my pistol, and if I press R, nothing really happens. But if I go ahead, aim down sight, and fire a shot, and then if I press R, I can see that the player is reloading the weapon. And that is how simple it is to do our reload animation for the player. One more little quirk that I want to fix is that while moving, the player is firing the weapon, which is perfectly fine. But we can also fire the weapon while running, which looks a little weird. So let's do a quick check to make sure that the player is not running. And only when the player is not running, we will allow the player to fire their weapon. But while they're walking, we are okay for them to fire the weapon. We already have a permission to fire function that allows the player to fire or not based on our current animation stance. And we're going to use this exact same function, and it's going to be a simple code that we're going to add to this. So after we determine which stance of the player allows them to fire, we're going to go ahead and search for an AND Boolean and connect this return value to the AND Boolean, and the result of the AND Boolean is going to be connected to the granted. Now this AND Boolean, what it does is whatever the two conditions that you connect to the AND Boolean over here, both of them must be true for the result to be true. If either or is false, then the result is going to be false. One Boolean is going to check our animation state and make sure that we are in the correct state before we can fire. And the second one, we're going to go ahead and drag in our character movement component. And here we're going to get our max walk speed. And if this max walk speed is less than or equal to, let's say, about 150, then we're going to go ahead and allow the player to fire. As soon as the max speed goes about 150, this is going to be false. And back in our event graph, off of false, we're going to go ahead and call in the stop fire function. Now let's go ahead and press play and then pull out the weapon. We should be able to fire normally. And then as soon as I start running, I am no longer able to fire. And if I'm shooting and if I start running, then it will stop firing even if I am holding down the left mouse button. And as soon as I stop running, I am firing again. All right, folks, so that's all I wanted to show you today. In our next tutorial, we're going to go ahead and add our ammo count to our player ID card at the bottom left of the screen. I'll catch you all in the next video.